Hi, everybody. My name is Birdie Jaworski, and welcome to No Rivets. I am here with Jen Lee, and we are going to be talking about all things transdimensional mapping. Welcome, Jen.
Hi, everyone.
So this is how we're going to work tonight. We're doing a live stream. We're going to answer your questions, but we're going to start by first talking about what transdimensional mapping is and what is remote viewing. What's the whole big deal with it? I'm going to explain how I came up with the process of transdimensional mapping. We're going to talk a little bit about that, and we're going to show some brand new beginner students in this, their results on 3i Atlas, and then we'll open up to questions. So get your questions in there. And Jen, do you want to tell people what to do if they have a question?
Yes, put QQ in front of your question in capital letters, QQ, and then write your question, and hopefully we'll get to them.
Yeah, we'll try to answer as many as we possibly can until we poop out. So, here we go. So, back in 1995, the US government declassified the Stargate program. The Stargate program happened over 20 years, and they spent millions upon millions of dollars of taxpayer money researching and discovering how to train soldiers, military soldiers, how to become psychic spies. And it worked. The government admitted that it worked. And in 1995, they declassified this program. That kind of coincided with all of these remote viewers in the military, with them reaching retirement age. They were let loose upon the world, and some of them started training others. It was at that time, once it was declassified, that I first learned remote viewing. This is the process of using only your mind to access information from anywhere, anytime, any place. You can access information from our deepest history before humans were even on this planet. You can even look at things like the very beginning of the universe. You can also look at things happening today. You can look at things in the future, even far in the future. And you're not stuck on planet Earth with remote viewing. You can look at absolutely anything in our universe. And here's a little tip. You can look at things outside of our universe, different dimensions, multiverses. Remote viewing is the most cool thing I can ever imagine doing, and I've devoted 30 years of my life to it. One of the things, when I first started learning remote viewing, I learned a modified method. It was modified from the original military method, CRV, controlled or coordinate remote viewing. That's the method that I learned, essentially. And it's a great method. There are many teachers out there now, students practicing CRV, many teachers in this. It's a great method. It works wonderfully. You get wonderful data. It's fantastic. But I was not happy with it. And the reason I was not happy with it there was a bunch of reasons. First of all, I felt that it was a little militaristic in its language, and I wanted to change that and make it more inviting for people. But the other thing that bothered me was this idea that you had to hit the target. It was either a hit or a miss. And I had that attitude for the first few years that I was in remote viewing. I would look at my data after I remote viewed something, and if I hit the target, if it was very, very obvious, if I drew literally what was in the photograph or described the event in a very direct way, I would call that a hit. And if I didn't, if my data didn't quite make sense to me or didn't look like the photo, I would call that a miss. And that bothered me. Now, remote viewing is typically done blind. It doesn't have to be. Blind means you don't know what it is you're remote viewing. Somebody else knows. Somebody else comes up with something for you to remote view. Originally in the military, what they did was they used the actual latitude and longitude coordinates of what they wanted the soldiers to remote view. They were sending them, inside enemy lines, looking at adversaries. So they had particular coordinates. They called that the coordinates, and that is what the military psychic spies, remote viewers, were given. But they soon discovered doing research that the coordinates could be completely random numbers. It was the intention of the tasker, what was written down for the remote viewers to view. And this opened it up and allowed them to look at things in the past or things in the future. So you have a task and you're given random numbers. In some schools of remote viewing, those are called coordinates. We tend to call it the tag or just the random numbers. And so that's what you're given. And so in my early days of remote viewing, I was looking at all kinds of crazy things. Some things were very verifiable photographs of things like the Taj Mahal, the Eiffel Tower, Mount Rushmore, Niagara Falls, the Alps, different people, different famous events, different royal weddings, say, or war events. And if I described and drew something that looked exactly like the picture or close enough to the picture and described things in a way that was very direct and makes sense, I would call that a hit. If my data didn't look like the picture, or if my descriptions weren't literal in terms of what the picture was representing, I would call that a miss. And I think that a lot of people in remote viewing still have that attitude today. It's a hit or a miss. I understand that. But I really wanted to have a real experience. I wanted to know what it was I was looking at every time. I didn't want to feel like I ever had misses. So I started looking at my data and really thinking about it in a deep way. And I began to understand that even my misses still had relevant data, but they were clouded in metaphor or symbology, because this is the way we tell stories to each other. Sessions are simply just stories. They're stories that we're telling. We have an experience and we share that with another person through our session. And if you think about it in real life, if you had talked to a friend, you have an experience and you share that experience with a friend, you don't tell it in a very literal way. There may be literal information in there, but you might use comparisons. It's like the time when Kathy stubbed her toe, or it's like this, it's like that. And remote viewing is the same way. The data often comes out in metaphor, symbology, analogy, different kinds of other storytelling tactics. This is just the way our subconscious minds work. And so I developed mapping as a way to honor all of that data. And I started to understand truly that all data is completely relevant. And what you need to do in a remote viewing session is deconstruct that data and figure out what's the metaphor here, what's the symbol, what does this represent? And the process, as we call that process, deconstruction, and that is what transdimensional mapping is. It's remote viewing, but deconstructing as you remote view. And it has opened up this incredible world of experience to me. It's allowed me to truly understand what I'm looking at. It takes time to develop that language with your subconscious. Maybe if you're a remote viewer out there, you might get a cat in your session. There might not literally be a cat there, but there might be something that's demanding yet soft, something that is hungry. There's all kinds of ways that your subconscious can give you this information. So in mapping, we teach our students to look at their data after they find out what they have mapped, and to figure out why. Why did my subconscious give me this piece of data? And the more that you do this, the more and more direct data you end up getting, because you're building this language with your subconscious. So that is essentially why I developed mapping and how it works. And we're going to share some student data now and show you just kind of pragmatically what this looks like. What does beginner student data look like? If you've been following our YouTube channel here, you've seen me map out all kinds of crazy things, from the very mundane to the wildly insane, right? And I've looked at the nature of God. I've looked at Skinwalker Ranch. I've looked at Gandhi. I've looked at the opening of the Olympics. And in my regular practice, about 75 to 80% of what I do is simply verifiable experiences. Experience is my word for target that they use in other schools of remote viewing. And so I use those 80% of my time, 75 to 80% of my time, I use that to practice, to do that deconstruction I talked about, to learn how my subconscious mind works. And it has opened up this incredible world for me. So now when I map pretty much anything, my subconscious gives me very direct data, and I'm able to understand what I'm looking at. And even if I don't have a name for it, for example, the 3-Eye Atlas session that I shared in 3 parts recently, I never figured out it was 3-Eye Atlas. It was because I didn't really know what 3-Eye Atlas was. I think I had heard about it a few times before I mapped this, but I didn't really know what it was. And so it wasn't in my subconscious. So my subconscious really couldn't give me that information, but it gave me a great description of it. And that's how mapping works, how remote viewing generally works. So let's show some student data, and you can see what it's like, what it really looks like. So the students here looked at the same thing, 3-Eye Atlas, at the moment that they mapped it. So they were looking at it at literally the moment they were mapping, the moment they were remote viewing. They were looking at it literally at that moment. That was the task. So let's share our results here. Okay, here's our student sessions. And don't forget to put your questions in the chat. We will get to them. So we're going to start now. Now, before I start, I want to explain. This was a class the first week of August. I first remote viewed, mapped 3-Eye Atlas on July 31st, which was the Friday before I left for Wilmington, North Carolina. This was a super cool class with incredibly wonderful people in it. Jen and I both went to Wilmington, and we taught a class of students. It was a 5-day class, and they learned the whole basic method of transdimensional mapping. And you can learn a lot of this method yourself for free on our YouTube channel here. We have a video called You Can Map Too, and you can learn pretty much everything you see me do in these sessions for free. So check it out. And these students, they were able to learn this in person and learn from me and Jen, learn from each other. And most of them had no remote viewing experience before this class. They were brand new. They were super excited about it. And one of the most exciting things about this class was that we did this class in conjunction with Chris Bledsoe. I don't know if you've heard of Chris Bledsoe, but he is an experiencer, very well-known experiencer. And for the past 20 years, he has been experiencing an incredible number of orbs and other entities in his life. And he regularly holds sky watches where everyone can see the orbs. They do a meditation. Chris does his own kind of calling down of the orbs, and people experience these orbs. So the week that we held the class, I taught during the day along with Jen, and Chris called down the orbs at night on the beach. And every single night, people saw many orbs. It was a really wonderful experience. And we're going to do another one of these beginning classes along with Chris here in Albuquerque, New Mexico next May. So if you're interested in that, shoot us an email and we'll add you to the list. It's going to be super fun and exciting. But beginner students, you have to understand, these guys that never done remote viewing before, most of them. There were a couple that had some training before, either through me or through other schools of remote viewing. And so they were brand new to this. And up to this point, we did this on the 3rd or 4th day of class. And up to this point, they had only looked at completely verifiable experiences, photographs, descriptions of events, things like I forget what we gave in that class. Jen, do you remember some of the things they looked at? Some of the beginning things?
The lady and Chris Bledsoe. We looked
that was at the end of the class. Like at the beginning, some of the verifiable stuff they did. I don't remember, gang, because it's just 2 months ago now and a lot of water under the bridge. But it would have been things like photographs of sailing races or Tesla in his laboratory or, things like that. It was pretty basic. And then
class can post. I saw that Sorsha put down Burning Man. That was one.
Oh yeah, Burning Man. That was an awesome experience. People did so great on that one. It was crazy. And so when we gave this one out, 3i Atlas, most of the students, of course, they didn't know what it was when they were mapping it out, but most of them had never even heard of it, just like I was unfamiliar with it. So it was kind of interesting. The data that they got, so much of it reflects the same data that I got. So let's take a look. So first up we have, and I know it's going to be hard to read all of these words on the screen. You'll see me looking to the side because I've got another big screen here where I can blow these up to read all of the language. And so we have, this is from Donna in the class, and she's wonderful. And look at what she got in one of her maps on this session. She got, and this reminds me so much of the data I got when I was looking at the information that the probe sent out into 3i Atlas. She get that this is a performance that is choreographed. Of course, that makes sense if you think of that kind of as in a symbolic kind of a way. This was a performance choreographed. They choreographed getting the information to the comet. Hidden knowledge, hidden esoteric knowledge. There's history and tradition here, a lost treasure. It's all show. And she got all kinds of information that this was, that there's a narrative here, but it's hidden from the public, the nature of what's going on, obfuscation. Now you have to remember, they'd been looking at verifiable stuff the whole time, and then all of a sudden they're getting this really interesting, intricate knowledge. So I think that Donna did a really fantastic job getting the idea here that there was encoded information, it was about history and tradition, that it was secretive, that the public wasn't being told about this. So I think that this was just a really cool session. Childhood innocence, that's a really nice word here, and that kind of reminds me of these individuals. So let's go on to the next one. We're just going to quickly go through these so you can see what student work looks like. And this is from Jack. Now, Jack, take a look at this. He drew the Earth and something coming toward the Earth. So he's out in space already. This is his, he did 2 maps. This is his first map. And he gets a being, stars, sun, Orion, a craft, energy. He gets a solar flare happening, perhaps, a spacewalk, a telescope. So, this is pretty remarkable. Remember, guys, these are beginning students just in the first days of a class. And for his second map, look at, he draws the whole solar system. But what I find really interesting in this map, and this didn't even, when he got this in class, I thought it was cool. But now I think it's even more cool when I reflect on my own data and look at this map, because in my own data, I was describing this Lucy probe that is in the asteroid belt. I even drew the asteroid rocks, the asteroids themselves around the probe. What does Jack draw here? The asteroid belt. So he's getting the solar system. The thing is obviously going to be coming through our solar system and the asteroid belt, where there is a probe that may be getting information on this object. So I thought this was really remarkable.
Birdie, you've got to advance to the next slide. It's the first slide.
Oh, sorry, guys. My bad. I'm looking on my other screen. Thanks, Jen. That's why Jen is here, because I cannot keep anything straight without her. There's Jack's second map. Take a look at that, gang. There's the solar system. There's the asteroid belt around. Now, Donna and Jack had very directly relevant sessions, right? There's not a lot of metaphor here, not a lot of symbology. This is very direct data. So pretty cool for both of them. I'm seeing some great questions come up. I cannot wait to answer them. Okay, now let's move on to Kathy. This was really cool. So if you recall, in the session that I did, I was describing these critters, right, that were on some planet way, 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 billions of miles away, billions of years ago, and they were like a roundish kind of body, and they had 5 appendages. And what does Kathy draw? A round body with the 5 appendages, releasing its potential, royal genetics, structure amidst the potential, precious cargo. This is great language describing similar things to what I got in this session. It's pretty remarkable. So I really loved it. She also gets that there's possible wormhole travel, and that's in the upper right-hand corner of this map. So nice job, Kathy. Guys, these are beginning students. You can map too. So, check that out and try it out yourself. Okay, and this is from Simone. Now, Simone's is pretty cool too. And I've got to open it up over here. And Simone, okay, look at Simone's in the lower right-hand corner of her map. Look what she drew. And if you recall back in my session, in the third part of my session, I drew literally the same exact thing. And what does Simone label it? The wheel of time. The wheel of time. This is exactly what I got in my session. The same thing. And you wouldn't expect this from this task, but we both got the exact same thing. Remember, Simone is a very brand new remote viewer. This was her first time learning remote viewing, and she drew exactly what I drew and described it in the same language. That's cool. And she has lots of other cool language here too. And you can see, and this is just something interesting to point out, everybody, when you are in the zone, when you're really mapping and you are there and you're experiencing this, your writing and your spelling go to complete heck. It's a mess everywhere. It's really hard. So Simone's writing is a real mess here. Sorry, Simone. But excellent data. Really, really beautifully done. Every student just did an amazing, amazing job.
Right. She had an hour class. An hour class and something going off on the edge, like where? Like most importantly, she had wheels in the air and chaos and extreme. So there was a lot of good stuff there. If we could understand her handwriting, it would have been probably a lot more. But sorry, Simone.
Okay, so now we're moving on to Heather, and we're going to show several of Heather's maps because, wow, Heather really knocked it out of the park. Now look at Heather's. Look what she wrote on the right-hand side. The song, Rollin', Rollin', Rollin'. What did I sing in my session? I wrote this on my session multiple times. She gets the exact same song, the exact same language. Exactly. There we are. It is what it is. You get what you get. That is my fundamental philosophy of remote viewing. You get what you get. Whatever you get is real, it's relevant, it's important. So Heather's also goes on, and she's describing something that's soft and blobby. I think that she's describing the beings. She is getting a hall of mirrors. Why a hall of mirrors? See, she's asking good questions in her mapping. This is one of the techniques that we teach. You can learn this and you can map too, to ask questions about what's going on. You want to treat your remote viewing, your mapping session like you are a detective. You're at the scene and you're going to pick up all the clues. So Heather's doing a really great job of these clues. She draws this kind of a big bulbous being and she starts to describe some things. Let's move on forward. And in her next map, look at what she drew. The same circle. She says it's important in history. Look at that. The same exact circle with the segments. Just like Simone got, just like I got in my session. We're seeing the same kind of symbology and language over and over again in these sessions. And she gets that there's beings. She gets, let's see what else here, transformed, something fiery. Right. I'm thinking archaeological, she writes, which is really interesting because this thing is billions of years old. So archaeological is a really great description. Jen, do you see anything here you want to point out?
She said, what caused this to happen? Like the question, like we all say, well, why did it happen? And, what exactly happened and what caused it to happen? She also says there is some death.
We learned that the civilization, they died off. They weren't able to procreate anymore and they didn't want to live as mechanical beings. So they made a decision that they would just slowly fade out of existence. So it's sad, but that's what you get. And then moving on, Heather's next map, there it is again, the same segmented circle.
And the four corners, which the four corners are just sending things out in all directions is what I get from that.
Yeah, and she also gets the rolling, rolling, rolling again.
Right.
So it's quite good. It's quite good. So let's move on. Oh, and the dinosaur isn't something Heather got in my classes. I give everyone stickers after they do a session because I know this is hard work. We have fun, guys.
And she had dimensions are big. So that was
Right.
the I think that's what they say about 3i Atlas, that it's pretty big. And
Exactly.
that it's, so she had some good stuff: old, structure, time, ground, rock. Yeah. Every one of her maps had something pretty valuable and connected.
Exactly. Exactly. So now this one's a little more unusual. And now we're getting into where we talk about more metaphorical or symbolic data. And this is from Sorsha in the class. And this was a really interesting session because in the prior pages to this map, she was describing something that died, a person or a being or something that died. And she was getting something mountainous. But what's interesting to me, if you look at this, and now see, guys, I have seen thousands upon thousands upon thousands of these different kinds of sessions from myself and others. And it's really, you start to really understand what people's subconsciouses are telling them. And one thing I find interesting about this one, if you look on the lower left, she draws what kind of would appear to be flowers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 flowers. Now, how many petals do each flower have? 5. And it's like a fluffy ball in the middle. I think that this is actually her subconscious's way of trying to understand the beings that other people were getting, that I got, the 5 appendages, something round in the center. And look up, there's something big in the sky that's shaped very much like what I drew for 3i Atlas. So it's really kind of interesting, more metaphorical take on this. And now we're moving on to Jean. And Jean also, she's getting the same segmented circular structure up in the upper left. She thinks it's a dome. And she's also getting a Voyager-like space instrumentation. And I described what's happening with 3i Atlas is like a Voyager type of event where information has been put on there. So pretty interesting, the same kinds of things that I got. Anything you want to point out, Jen?
Yeah, she says the green blur of lights, and you had green on yours, and actually they've been saying that 3i Atlas has green, emitting green.
Exactly.
She mentions CERN as question marks as CERN when people have been talking about CERN just recently in regards to that as well, and a space station. So it's and also some sort of facility for observation and scientific study. So
right.
It's sort of like the technological part of what's going on, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. So great, another great map. Every map is perfect. And I always tell students this. They all want it to look like the picture. But if you actually look at the data, there are so many more layers of information in that data that you can decode. And again, these are students who've been doing this for 3 days?
Yeah.
And look what they're doing in 3 days. Look what they were able to produce. Amazing, amazing, amazing stuff. And then here's another one. And this is kind of,
right?
Everyone can map too.
Everyone can map.
And this is Souls. And Souls is also pretty interesting. Another metaphorical mapping, which is wonderful. Look, he gets this whole idea that there's a group of people that are dead and something crashed. Well, their probe did crash into the asteroid and the people are dead. And he gets something flying out, which he thinks is a soccer ball. I think that's the probe that went to 3i Atlas. Pretty interesting. But what Sol figured out, and he Sol did something really great. And I'm going to show the next map to show what he did, because this is how you deconstruct people. This is what I'm talking about. So Sol, in the next one, he's trying to figure out, well, is this really an airplane that crashed and there's dead people and some soccer ball flying way out there? And so he says, is this a metaphor? He asks this in his map, and then he gets yes. And that right there, when you're mapping, once you know it's a metaphor, then you can start really digging in to find out what your subconscious was telling you to deconstruct that metaphor and get more direct data. So good job, Sol, in figuring out that you're getting your data through metaphorical imagery, which is completely valid and completely fine in the mapping method. Wonderful work, as always. You guys are so cool. Now we're up with Judy. And Judy, let's see.
She has places to help others in nature, within nature, and discovering and making something from her. And she has a ship. She writes a ship somewhere, sky high. And she says it's like they're trapped, which is the feeling that they are trapped on their planet or their situation.
Right. And in a way, their message is all trapped into that encoding, right? It's like everything is encoded. It's all trapped right there for someone to discover, like we're discovering, right? And it's another really interesting session, which is a little hard to read. But awesome job. Oh, and she also gets, show me the most interesting part, right? She writes this down. That's one of, what are the cues you learn? And you can map to, you can ask yourself when you're either remote viewing or mapping, show me the most interesting part. Show me the most essential element that I need to know. Show me the thing that I'm missing. Show me the most important part. These are all great questions to ask. And we teach this, and you can map too, and in our other classes. And so she asks that question and she gets discovering something, discovering something. It's a great answer. Nicely done. Okay, on to Christy. And guys, when Jen and I decided we were going to do this Q&A tonight, we asked the students of the class, hey, send us your maps on 3i Atlas, and we are putting up every single map that was sent in to us. We're not cherry picking these. We're not saying, oh, we're only showing the good ones. No, we're literally showing every map, okay? So you get what you get. I am a firm believer in that, and I love all of my students' data. It's amazing. So here we got Christy's. She gets the heart. I drew the heart multiple times in this session. And she gets the sky all around, ghostly. And she's drawing like a being with maybe antenna or appendages of some sort. She also gets the Thunderbird symbol. Now, the Thunderbird is a very powerful symbol. It's a metaphor. It's a metaphor for rebirth, right? For rising from the ashes, rebirth. And that's essentially what this data could be. It's a rebirth of this society, a way for other people to remember and to know who they were. So I think there's some pretty interesting data. What else do you see there, Jen?
The beginning of our life, which is really their history, their story. Like, remember us, this is how we started. And then she had people are divided, which is something that I got as well. The people that were divided in their thinking. Notice she's got above our planet looking down, like that's probably the view from 3i Atlas when they get close enough to our planet. Yeah, it's pretty good. Energy field.
Yeah.
Up, UFO.
Yes, she gets consciousness here, mystery and consciousness and energy field. Spirit called by consciousness, spirit leaving the body. That's right. What happened with the civilization. So really beautiful work here from Christy. Okay, now we get Doris.
Oh, hers says traveling through the solar system.
Yeah, traveling through the solar system, right? That's what 3i Atlas is doing right now, traveling through the solar system.
And I think she had some really good questions. What's the most important thing to know? Everything life. And then what is the most important life? And that's what these people were all about, their lives, how they wanted to talk about their lives and send that.
Exactly.
So, and this is going there to the abyss. So that's some good stuff there too.
Yeah, this is really wonderful, wonderful work. And you can see, guys, how much data these students are getting. This is chock full of information. I mean, we could probably spend an entire day dissecting every data point if we had time. So we just wanted to do a quick little survey to show you guys. Britt! I know Britt's on the channel tonight. So Britt, look at, she is drawing the same kind of things that other people are drawing. This reminds me of Kathy's, fuzzy dudes with the appendages. She's also getting, she gets it, it's a metaphor, but there's something explosive, something about culture. And that's what this is. This is a story about their culture. And she gets that it's missing. Their culture's missing. Yes, it is missing. They're gone now. They've been gone for billions of years. And it's just this memory that's left. Organization, timing. She gets this whole idea that there's something, a big situation, something is lost, and out of space and out of time. That's perfect. Nicely done, Britt.
Right.
Really good job. Okay. Barbara. I think Barbara's our last one. And so Barbara, she's also getting similar kinds of data, zap power electricity, this idea, global warming, this question. So she's getting this idea that there's something planetary changes happening here and that this is important to know about this. And that's also information. I got a little bit about that there was resource depletion on the planet of the entities. Now Jen got a lot of information about that. And so Jen, hey, let's bring Jen up now. Do you want to point out anything else about Barbara's before we talk about?
She says keeping our Earth healthy, which I'm going to segue to what I got, the information that I got. Like gosh, I don't even know how to start. The one thing, I guess I'll start saying the few things that I can remember real quickly. But the one thing I got was that, so the Freya Atlas sent, well, the people, I don't even know how to even start. How should I start? I got, like, I'll talk about some of this is advanced work, so I'm not going to show it, but I got like a bunch of beings, and there was a leader talking to them. And it was like a really sad feeling. It was like really, really sad and really heavy. And really what it was is he was informing them that their planet was getting depleted. And they had been around for like a really long time. And what they had done was not take care of their planet. And the message they want to give out, that's one of the messages I think that's on that flash drive is, and this is what I got, was like, preserve your resources, which is an odd way of saying, be ecological. Pay attention to what you're doing to your planet. But that's what I got in several different places. Preserve your resources, because they didn't. And they were starting to decay as a civilization. I mean, they reached their heyday when everything was really great. And then they just kept going on. And, eventually they didn't take care of their planet. And it started doing what our planet's maybe doing, getting destroyed because it's not being taken care of. So this is why Barbara says, keep our Earth healthy. That's exactly what the message was to do. Keep it healthy, do it right and pay attention. So that's what the most interesting thing was that I got from that. And it was very sad because, are we close to our demise as well? Or are we headed that direction? Now for these beings, it took them a really long time to get there. And they had been around for a very, very long time, and they were very evolved. So, they were much more evolved than we are, and I guess they were around a lot longer than we were as well. But that's the heavy duty thing that I saw, and it was a really sad situation for them to do that. And then segueing from there, so I had the people were divided. Remember, someone had people were divided. I had the same thing, even though they worked together and they were communal, and I got all those same words that Birdie got. There were different groups that believed in different things. Because one of the questions I asked was well, why didn't they just leave their planet? Why did they stay there? And that was where the division came. There were people who wanted to stay and people who wanted to leave, and people who wanted to figure out what was going on. And that was the heavy duty part, that nobody was in agreement with anything and everyone did their own thing. So they did send out probes. They did send out ships that went other places. They sent out all kinds of things. And I know that there was a question the other day. Someone said, well, how many probes were there? I got over 300 things were sent out from the planet in all different directions. Like different kinds of probes, some that just told the history, some that sent signals out, some that were trying to receive information. And then there were also spaceships of the people who decided to leave and go find someplace else to go. Not people, but the beings. And it reminded me, I don't know if you guys have seen the Netflix series 3 Body Problem, or the Chinese version called 3 Body, which is a science fiction written by a Chinese author that YouTube has the whole series called 3 Body, and it's also on Prime. And it was similar about people leaving their planet for for other reasons, not the same reason as these people, but for different reasons. And I thought, oh my gosh, is that it? Am I getting influenced by that? But it wasn't really that as much as people want to tell their history. They want to tell their story. They want to warn people who would ever want to listen. And so they sent out all these probes with information to wherever it went. And because it's so far away, the trajectory was it went all over. And I also got that they sent it out over many years, so that some of the information has come by Earth before. We just didn't have the technological way to get that information, understand it, or receive it. So the thing that happened in 1977, was that part of it? Probably. Is what's happening now part of it? Probably. Did it happen earlier? Yes, I got that for sure. We just were not able to receive it all and understand it. because we were not technologically advanced enough. We are now. We are better now than we were then. But that's part of what happened. And because it sent it out to all these different directions, my thing was to find out, actually, I looked at it to say, well, where did it land? More than anything, I wanted to know. But the interesting thing is I only got one image of where it landed. And it was embedded in some brown dirt or something. Like, was that the one that's on 3i Atlas that's headed our way? That's the only one that I found where it actually went. But the others are still traveling throughout space. And when it finishes going by us, it's going to continue to go out in space because it's got internal compassing and some kind of free energy thing. And that it's different technology than ours. So we can't even explain it, but it's got very advanced stuff. And so they're just going to keep going on and out into as far as they can go until they disintegrate. That's what I got. So I know people want to know, is it going to have, I didn't get that there were any beings on 3i Atlas, but the information is there. And maybe there were some other spaceships that did have beings that did land somewhere. And, but I didn't look enough into it because I didn't have that much time. I mean, it was overwhelming, so much information. And I had to take a break because it was just more than I could handle, too much. So.
Yeah, Jen's amazing mapper. She took my class last September, kind of the first public class I taught after coming back to the field after kind of working in secret for a long time. And she's really developed so well and is incredible. She is the operations manager for our student development group, which is called Mapping Mavericks. Jen's amazing and an amazing mapper. So glad she's with us. All those students are amazing. All those new students. Are you kidding? Can you imagine after 3 days doing this? Can you imagine how amazing they're going to be after 3 years? It'll be crazy. So
my Birdie can do it. She's been doing it for 30 years. I've been just doing it for just a little over a year. She's been doing it for 30 years.
So yeah, 30 years.
How much better can we get, right? And after 3 days, you see how people are doing. How much better can you get after a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, like Birdie? So I don't know. She's fabulous.
Everybody can do it. Everybody can do it. I am not special. I'm just obsessed. Literally everybody can do this, gang. Okay, so we're going to start taking questions now. And I've seen there's so many questions that have gone by. I'm going to scroll up and start going through them. So hold on, gang.
I think the first one started 1 minute after we started.
I know, gosh. Okay, scroll up here.
Let's see, guys. So many.
Okay, Man from Future had a question, but he didn't post it here. But I think his question was on how to set up a task. So if you would like to give something to someone to map out to remote view, or if you think of something you want to remote view or map out yourself, it's super simple. Get a piece of paper, get the photograph of what you would like to map out, or you write down if there's something that doesn't have a photograph. Like there's no photograph of, any kind of beings that might be in the Orion constellation. And there's no photographs of the ancient Sumerians, right? So if you want to look at something that you don't have a photograph for, you just write it out. The ancient Sumerian civilization, at the pinnacle of their civilization or during the decline of their civilization, whatever. So you always want to have what it is and what time you want to be there. So if you want to look at the Eiffel Tower, you want to put a particular time because you might end up landing when it was being constructed or when it eventually falls in some way, when the sun blows up or, so you want to put a time component in your task. So you have what you want to look at and the time that you want to be there. And you can put it in an envelope or type it out on your computer, and then you assign a random number. And it could be, the random number, we typically use a string of 8 numbers, but it's just a psychological tool. The random number is a psychological tool. It's also a way to organize your files, but it can help your left brain do something at the beginning of a session. If you watch You Can Map Too, it will make a lot more sense. So you write your random numbers, 647816994, and then throw it in a bag, throw a whole bunch more in a bag, and when you feel like mapping, just pull one out and you won't remember what's in there, and go to town. Go to town. There's also many, 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 many experience pools on the internet put up by a number of remote viewing groups or remote viewers themselves that have lots of experiences you can look at. There's one at No Rivets called Experience This on No Rivets, and we've got 75 things you can try out for yourself. The numbers are right there. You do your session, and then you click on the number, and you see the picture or the written cue. And all the ones at No Rivets are verifiable because they're good for homework. They're kind of just fun for homework. So there's no real questions about the universe in there, but those are good for practice. It's good to do as many verifiable as possible, especially when you're a student and just getting started. And like I said, I like to keep a 75-25 split, 75% just doing regular homework to keep my skills up and to learn more about the process. And then the 25, that's the free-for-all, baby. That's your 3-eye atlas. That's your gray dudes out there. That's your angels and demons, and that's your crucifixion of Christ and all of those crazy things that you can look at. So yeah, I think that's a good kind of percentage to keep in mind as you go forward practicing. Keep most of them verifiable, but throw some fun stuff in there. Throw some fun stuff in there. Okay, so now that was the first question we had. And
okay, well, this is from Greta V. Which meditation practices are most effective for improving remote viewing abilities?
Oh, that's a great question.
I think anything that you can quiet your mind so
yes.
that you can talk to your subconscious and be able to hear or understand what it's trying to tell you. So it's like being most relaxed and being most centered, and most quiet. To be able to hear and be relaxed and calm and not crazed.
Yeah, and that's really good advice from Jen. Other things that people can do, a lot of people like to listen to binaural music. This was popularized by the Monroe Institute, but there are many, many tracks on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, wherever you get your tunes. Look up theta state binaural music, binaural. And what binaural music is it puts different frequencies. You have to use headphones or earbuds because it puts different frequencies in each ear. You can't tell that it's doing that because they usually have this pretty music over it. But putting different frequencies in each ear sets your brainwave patterns into a particular state. I actually taught a little class on how to do this and showed a lot of the different kinds of equipment if you want to actually watch your brainwaves in action. And that's available at Ubiquity University. It's just a 4-hour little class, which is kind of fun. But you can listen to that binaural music. There's tons of free tracks out there, and it works. It calms you down. Most people who work in remote viewing feel that being in a theta state or theta alpha state is the most conducive to practicing mapping or remote viewing. Now, I think that the more that you do, the more your brain waves change. Jen is actually involved in a research project that she is heading up now in our group, where she is charting the changes that happens in people's brains using mapping. The more you map, how is your mind changing? How is your brain changing? Do you want to talk about that a little bit, Jen?
Oh, yeah. Well, pretty much it was because I'm just being nosy. And I realized that when I started mapping, I'll have to say how it all started. So when I first started, before I went to Birdie's class, she was talking about the Muse, which is a measures your brain waves. It's a device called the Muse. And so I was doing that, and I was measuring my brain when I was meditating. So I was doing that for about a month before I got to go to the class. And as soon as I finished taking the class, I was starting to use the Muse again while I was meditating. And I noticed that and before that, my brain was like 91, 92, 93% calm is what it said, the Muse did. Once I took the class, my brain was like 50% calm, 60% calm, a tremendous difference from 90 to like 50 or 60. So that's when I realized, okay, what's going on in my brain? And I understood that what's happening when you start mapping is that you're working constantly to talk with your subconscious, or it's talking to you, and you've got to figure out what's going on because it starts that dialogue. And as a result, the more you map, the more your brain changes. And I'm starting to see the differences in what I get and how I come up with things and the ideas that I get. And my subconscious, and the more connection I have with my subconscious, I get better ideas like, oh, you need to do this. You need to do that. This is why I'm giving you this. And sometimes it plays jokes on you. I mean, it's really interesting to see what happens. And so that to me is like really amazing. And I like to know what other people are going through, not just me. I mean, I'm sure everyone's going through their way of brain change. But and I wanted to understand how that was, because it's pretty amazing when you start watching it. And I can't get Birdie to do it because she already changed her brain like way back when. So
yeah, 30 years later, I don't even know where my brain is right now. It's somewhere. It's somewhere, folks. Goodness
so as a new
where.
student, you can track it better and see how far it goes and what happens. So I mean, that's why it's such an. I think it's really amazing and interesting. Of course, then again, I'm nosy like that, and that's why I'm doing that. So
yeah, and Britt I just highlighted a comment from Britt. She took that class and she bought the NeoRhythm. The NeoRhythm. I've been showing my little tools here as they come up. The NeoRhythm is amazing. It's amazing. It is a U-shaped device. Here's mine. And you can put it on your head like so. You can do it like so. You can do it around your neck. And in it also, this one's different than listening to binaural music or using a muse. A muse will measure your brain waves. This measures your brain waves, and you can actually see an EEG pattern that shows you exactly where your brain waves are. But the NeoRhythm's pretty cool. It literally puts your brain into the state that you desire, and it has kind of an infinite number of settings. You can input exactly the frequencies that you like, and we talk about this in our classes. And I've got that little mini workshop on it if you'd like to take a look, or you're always welcome to ask me questions. These are, consumer devices. They're not that expensive. Well worth the NeoRhythm. The NeoRhythm it uses pulsing electromagnetic frequency, which is different than binaural music, which is putting different frequencies in each ear. This literally is pulsing electromagnetic frequency into your brain. It's also an incredible, incredible tool for pain relief. And there are so many peer-reviewed studies on pulsing electromagnetic frequency, including the use of the NeoRhythm. So check out the NeoRhythm. It's an A++ device. I highly recommend it. I get no money for recommending anything. I don't do anything like that. I'm just telling you because I love it. So,
well, we're never going to get through these questions because we're only on question number 3.
We got lots of good ones. Now, somebody was, okay, I got to find it. Where are you? The guy asking about the CIA agent. I got to answer this because he's posted it several times, and it's such a great story. It's insane. Guys, if you want to hear a crazy story, buckle up because this is nuts. I got to find the question here.
It was about what did Frank Camper say to you? That's the question.
Yeah. Okay.
So then that's the story.
Yeah, that's the question. We can't find it right now because the comments are running fast and furious, but this is a primo story. This happened back when I was at the Farsight Institute. This was probably 28 years ago, around there. I was at Farsight. I had become the vice president. And honestly, back then, this was the early days of the internet as we know it today. And we had a website at Farsight, but you know what? Remote viewing was very new out there, and I was just a nobody. Nobody knew who I was. I was working at Farsight, but I wasn't a famous person. I hadn't written a book. I wasn't an anybody. I was just working behind the scenes, helping to teach classes, practicing myself, organizing some things. And I was in the office at Farsight. At the time, Farsight had a couple of rooms they rented at the Holiday Inn there in Atlanta. One was like a conference room that we used for teaching, set it up as a teaching center. And the other was a little office area. And I was in the office, and this guy came into the office while I was there, and I was filing student sessions away. And he took out his credentials, and he was a CIA agent. And I said, well, Dr. Brown isn't in the office right now. Let me take down your information and I'll have him give you a call. And he said, no, I'm here to see you. And I'm thinking, me? Nobody knows who I am. But he knew my name, he knew everything. And he said to meet him at his hotel later that day. And I went. He was staying at an exclusive, fancy, higher-end hotel, and he had rented out the penthouse suite. But I didn't go alone. I took my partner, and we both went. And Jen's heard the story from both of us. So I go up there and I go in, and the CIA agent is sitting there. He's sitting there in front of this big coffee table, and he has 3 people with him. To one side of him, he has a gentleman who I say was probably in his 50s. He was wearing like a rakish cap, and he introduced him as his driver. And to this other side of the CIA agent, there was a very young woman in her 20s, no older than that. And he introduced her as his secretary. And the other gentleman to the right of the woman, he introduced him, he was like in his 30s, as his assistant. Now, the 3 people he had just introduced didn't say hello, didn't extend a hand to shake my hand or anything. They just stared at me. And for the rest of this meeting, they literally stared exactly at me. And they ignored my partner. They just stared at me. And so the CIA agent then takes out this big rolled up map. It's a map of the world, and he rolls it out in front of me on the coffee table. And the map of the world, it did look a little bit different than it does, like we all know the map of the world. It just, and I can't even identify exactly in what ways it was different, but there was something just a little bit off about the outline of the map. And he points to this on the coast of India, and he says, there's going to be a gravity spike here. And he looks at me and says, do you know what a gravity spike is? And I said, no, I have no idea. Then he points to like Long Island and says, there's a gravity spike here. And I'm just like, okay. And that was it. He rolls the map up, and then he tells my partner, he says, hey, can you go get us all some iced tea? And my partner gets up and leaves to go get iced tea. It was like he was in a trance, and I'm thinking, don't leave me alone here. So he leaves. And at this point, Frank Camper tells me, he says, after my partner had left, he said, well, the government has developed a quantum computer that remote views. Now, you have to understand, quantum computing back then in the mid-90s was like just an idea. It was very, very theoretical. It's not like today where we're talking about developing all these kinds of quantum computers, and there are quantum computers in existence today. But back then it was just like the slimmest idea, and I had never heard of anything like that. But this guy, the CIA agent, tells me that the government had developed a quantum computer that can remote view, and that it took snapshots of the future. And I don't know what he meant by snapshots, because I was almost in a trance myself. These people were staring at me. This strange CIA agent was sharing this really bizarre information. My partner was gone. And then he told me that one of the snapshots in the future that they had taken had me in it. And that's why he was having this meeting with me. And then after that, it was like right after that, my partner comes back up with all this iced tea on a tray. And the CIA agent says, okay, the meeting's over. We didn't even get the iced tea. True story. It's crazy. That was 28 years ago or so. The guy's still alive. He's in his 90s now. And what does it all mean? I do not know. What did he see me doing in the future? I do not know. All I know is that he saw me in the future, and I don't know how far in the future that would be. I mean, maybe he sees me doing stuff I'm doing today, because I went silent for 23 years. And now I'm back. Or maybe it's even further in the future. I'm not super young anymore, but I still got some good years ahead of me. So I don't know. So that's to answer the question about the crazy CIA agent. It's a nutty story, but it's a true story.
Okay, we're just going to skip to a couple others. I mean, I'm kind of lost in the questions, but so if we didn't answer your question, I'm sorry. But there's one. What did you see RVing the Men in Black, or did you even do that?
Yeah, I've looked at that a bunch of times, actually. The Men in Black. And I think that there are different kinds of men in black. Now, first of all, there are government agents or government adjacent, I'll say, Black Ops or Department of Defense, like contractors or whatnot. There are men in black, people that will come and intimidate witnesses. And those are just, government agents or government adjacent agents or what have you. There's plenty of that happens in this whole field. But then there's also a paranormal man in black that some people have reported, and this usually happens around experiences where people they see a strange figure. John Keel writes about this, and you should read the Mothman Prophecies if you haven't. Don't watch. I mean, the movie's good too, but read the book, and you'll read lots of stories, and he gives great descriptions. And I have remote viewed or mapped out those kinds of men in black encounters, and these are definitely more paranormal type critters, maybe extraterrestrial in some cases, or mimicking a human life form, and they're trying to fit in, but they don't quite fit in. Maybe they're eating strange combinations of food, or it kind of they remind me of the observers in Fringe. That's what they remind me of when I've mapped them out, and I've even called them that in maps I've done of them. We're having a big thunderstorm here in Albuquerque, New Mexico right now, which was unexpected. We weren't supposed to get rain tonight. So if you hear any thunder going on, gang, that's what it's picking up.
Yeah, I hope you don't lose power.
Nah, we're good.
So this is an interesting question that I'm sure a lot of people will have. Since you exercise your process with 3i Atlas as your subject, other groups or individuals, remote viewers, looked at this subject. Results have been diverse, specific, positive, or negative. Why?
So why are some people getting things that are negative and some people getting things that are positive? You know what? When you map anything, when you remote view anything, you are not divorced from the process. It's your consciousness having an experience. And different people come to things with different ideas about the world. You're always going to see what you're looking at through your educational lens, your cultural conditioning, whatever spirituality you hold or religion that you practice, what age you are. All kinds of things are a factor here. I tend to look at things very objectively and with a sense of awe and wonder, because I think that the universe is full of so many magnificent, incredible things, and I always tend to give things the benefit of the doubt. And I didn't feel anything negative whatsoever with 3i Atlas. It's just it's an astronomical object. It just happens to be carrying a thumb drive type thing, a little object of some sort that it has encoded information on it. There's nothing negative about that. Now, why other people would get that? They might be focusing on what happened to those people, or there's all kinds of different things that they could be looking at or thinking about. I know that different remote viewers get different things, but I really believe it all comes down to how you're interpreting the data. You have to understand too that that you need to really have a practice in remote viewing, if that's what you're doing, where you start to really understand what your subconscious is trying to say. It's like in the student maps that we showed earlier, when students get that there were people that had died. Well, you might look at that and think, wow, this is bad. This is going to be bad. It's going to fly here and people are going to die. But that's not really what it's necessarily representing. There's a metaphor there, a death of a civilization in the encoding of information. So sometimes it's easy to misinterpret data, but we really, in mapping, we have this practice where we really deeply try to understand what every piece of data means. So I hope that answers that question.
Okay, so here's some suggestions I want to look at. Could you remote view the following? Oumuamua, Dark Side of the Moon, Beneath the Paw of the Sphinx in Egypt, the Teos Caves in Ecuador supposedly contain ancient metal tablets. So maybe you've done some of them already, right?
I've done everything but those ancient metal tablets. I've never heard of that before. Okay, so we're going to add that to the list, but we are going to start. Okay, gang, we're going to start posting more regular sessions. I know I had like 6 months where I didn't post anything and people thought I fell off the planet, but we were just really, 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 really busy getting our Mapping Mavericks together, working on student development, teaching, and I did some traveling over the summer to a couple of events. conferences. But our next one we're going to present is Sunday, and we're going to do a little premiere live so that everyone can get in the chat and have fun. And we're doing, this one is a session that I mapped out on Chris Bledsoe's first encounter with the lady, the entity that he calls the lady. And so it's a fascinating mapping that I did. There's multiple maps in this one. I really get into Chris's head, and you're going to hear what he's thinking. I learn a lot about what's happening in that area. And of course, the lady, full mapping on the lady. So join us on Sunday. We're going to do that at 2 p.m. Mountain, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So the link will be up for that tomorrow so that you can hit the remind me bell and get notified about that. So that's going to be coming Sunday. Other things that are coming up soon. Bigfoot. A lot of people have asked about Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Yeti, all those, same thing, same critter, different locations. That's another one. But I've mapped out, I've done Bigfoot many a time, but there's a really cool case here in New Mexico, and I mapped that one out a couple years ago. So it's an older video, really cool. And other things that are coming up soon. We've got Bigfoot, Chris Bledsoe, I don't know, all kinds of really cool, crazy stuff. So I have a little post in the community post section of the channel here where I'm asking people, what do you want to see? I did get requests for the crucifixion of Christ. I have looked at that multiple times. Really fascinating event. It was a real event, but maybe a little different than what traditional religions say about it. And so that's another one I'll post sometime fairly soon. So get your suggestions in. And I have over 10,000 sessions that I've mapped that I've videoed. Yeah, I started videoing my sessions because I was mapping my brain waves. And so it was a way of being able to look, match up after the fact so I could match data points when I got in ET, what were my brain waves doing? And through this process, I now can, if I look at my brain waves while I'm mapping, I literally can tell what I'm looking at by looking at my brain waves. There are certain spikes that happen. There's a particular pattern that happens when there's a horse in the experience. And so I've been able to identify all these different data points. So I use that as part of the mapping. So sometimes you might see me, or I might make comments on my brain waves in a session. I've done that, I know, in other sessions. It's pretty interesting stuff.
Okay, here's an interesting question that we probably want to do if you haven't mapped it. What do you think is the nature of consciousness is? And is the universe itself conscious? What do you think people like yourself who are remote viewers are tapping into? Thank you. That was from Sean Delagoon.
Sean, that is probably the hardest question I'll ever get in my life. No one has been able to really codify consciousness. It is still one of those things that everybody kind of knows what you're talking about, but science hasn't really been able to identify or explain it in any truly meaningful way. I mean, people are trying to make some inroads. There are lots of ideas. Does it arise from outside of the body? Does it arise from the brain? All of these kinds of things. My experience doing this for 30 years and just being a human being on this planet, and I've had ET experiences, I've had UFO experiences going back to 7 years old, but I feel that I don't feel that I'm going anywhere. I mean, that's one of the reasons I don't like the word remote viewing. There's nothing remote about it. I don't feel like I'm sending my mind to Alpha Centauri or sending my mind literally to Africa or China or any place else or down the street. I literally feel like it's already a part of me. I believe that we are in this big field, a consciousness field, and that we are everything. I really believe that. The Nature of God session that I did kind of illustrates some of this, and this idea that we really are kind of all connected, that everything is amazing, that everything reverberates inside of us. So when I'm mapping, I feel like it's me. I feel like I'm just there and it's pouring out of me. It's not just in your mind either when you're mapping. You feel it in your body. You get all kinds of body things. This is one of the things I teach in class, and we do in in some of the more advanced techniques. We actually do modeling. We get tracing paper out. We do layers. But you feel it in your body. So sometimes, you know, you might be writing something, and that's data. And if your elbow all of a sudden hurts, well, I can guarantee you there's something going on there at that experience that's making your elbow hurt. There was a student that I had once, and he was having a tough time in class. And this just kind of goes to the consciousness question, because there's one thing to think about something and have it in your head. It's another to really feel like you're there. That's called bilocation. And students in my classes always end up experiencing this at some point. And this particular student, he was having a tough time because he was very left-brained, and he came in as a skeptic. He was trying to prove me wrong. He was just kind of, not quite putting his whole heart and soul into it. So I ended up giving him a really terrible thing to remote view. This is back when I was teaching remote viewing and not mapping. And I gave him a World War II event, the firebombing at Dresden, which was a really horrific event. The firebombing created these literal vortexes of fire, like tornadoes of fire. It completely destroyed the entire town, and all this history and beautiful art was destroyed. It was a really terrible thing, like all war. All war is terrible, regardless what sides. It's just terrible, right? What we do to each other. But I gave him that to remote view. And while he's doing it, he's like went in grumbling, and a few pages in, he literally stands up and starts running around the room and ran out the door, literally screaming that he was on fire. And after that, he was amazing, one of the best I've ever seen. So that unlocked something in him. I don't do that. I don't put students through the gauntlet these days. That was, 25 or so years ago. But it worked for him, and it got him going. But he had this real experience. He really was there. And this bilocation, it can happen even in more gentle things. In a class that I taught, I had given out it was like a photo of Jacques Cousteau under the ocean, doing his exploration under the sea. And one of my mappers was swaying back and forth like this while she was mapping. And I thought maybe she wasn't feeling well. So I went over, I said, "Hey, are you okay? Are you feeling okay?" And she's like, "I'm underwater." She's grinning, "I'm underwater." Yes, she was underwater. Another session that I've given out is like a pie eating contest where these little kids are all at this big table, and it was a photograph, and you got the judge there with a stopwatch, and the parents are watching around. The kids are all stuffing their face full of pie, and I had a mapper say, "Oh, I feel like I'm gonna throw up," while she was working on this one. And Jen, you've had bilocation experiences, right? Tell us some of yours.
Okay, the one that I had, the one that I didn't even realize what it was until someone asked me, did I bilocate? And I thought, oh yeah, I guess I did. It was it was at the seance for Sir Arthur Conan Doyle that was held at the Albert Hall in London. So when I first got that, got the thing, all I said was, "Oh, my paper is not big enough for the circle of people that I want to draw," because I wanted to draw a circle of people. And then I remember looking to my right and left and saw people in black and white. I mean, it was like the photograph is black and white, but I saw them in black and white clothing, like old-timey clothing. It was like, and I didn't think about it until afterward that I felt like I was there. And I knew it was like lots and lots of people. There were 10,000 people who showed up at this seance. And then I drew on my map a circle of people holding hands. And I didn't even think about what that meant until like hours later. All of a sudden, I was ready to go to bed, and my mind was like all quiet. And I shot up and I said, "Oh my God, I got the seance. That's exactly what it was." And at the time, I didn't think anything of it because it was just like drawing the map. But this is what your subconscious does. You get information at the oddest times, which is why your mind is working constantly. When you really get into it, and you're really into it, your mind just goes constantly. So. And that was pretty cool. I didn't think about that, but definitely I was there because it was huge. It was like so many people there. So that's my experience. But here's another question I think I want to address first. This is from Jasic. The sessions you uploaded seem obvious that what you RV. How often do you RV, and aren't sure about what you're viewing or get the target off? Joe McMonagle said RV is accurate to target about 30% of the time. So Birdie is a maniac. She does it she max 4 hours a day, pretty much all the time, which is a lot. But okay, so that's that. And she's pretty accurate. I mean, because I've seen her work and she's really accurate as far as I'm concerned. And she's done a lot for a long time. And when Joe McMonagle says RV is accurate 30% of the time, like, what do you mean by 30% of the time? The exact target, the way he describes exact, hitting or missing? You looked at the maps that our students did. What percentage of what they got was accurate that you think? Was it more than 30%? Some of them were more than 30% accurate. And this is within 3 days. So understand that there's a lot of different metrics that people use to describe what it is that they do and how they do it, and their methods are different. So I would say, and even if some of the students want to put down what they think their percentage of accuracy is, although we don't talk like that, you know, I mean, because we're still developing. All we're trying to do is get better and better and better. So we're not like really grading ourselves in terms of that.
Never grade. I believe that you get what you get, and that all sessions are perfect for that moment in time, for that explorer. And it's really a question of deconstructing your data and understanding what your subconscious was trying to say. And the more you do of that process, it's like learning a musical instrument or a foreign language or any other skill out there, square dancing. The more you do, the better you get. So, you know, students in a few days can do it that way. I've been doing it for 30 years. It's just simply time. And yeah, I am a maniac, like Jen says. I am obsessed with this. And for a very, 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 very long time, probably longer than some of you have been alive. I've been doing 2 sessions a day, one in the wee hours and one later in the day. Generally, and some days the times get a little flipped around. I don't miss very many days when I'm traveling. I may miss some days, but I even do it when I travel. I've got a fun session I did. I recently went to Sweden for a week for a conference, and I didn't, you know, traveling like that, I couldn't take my big paper and all my pens and markers. So I did a session on my iPad, and ended up being a really funny session. So I'll probably share that one sometime soon. I'll just post it in the community posts because I didn't video it, but it was pretty silly. But you can do it anywhere. You don't need fancy equipment. You don't need to spend any money or a lot of money. You can take our free You Can Map 2 class and learn pretty much everything you're seeing on this channel. We do offer classes for those that want a little more in-depth look at this and feedback and practice. We do teach a little more in our beginning class. It lasts 5 days. We teach you all the things and You Can Map 2, plus some other cool stuff like body scans. You probably saw me do the body scan in the 3i Atlas session of the Tribble, right? Or Z-bops, as some people are calling them. And so we teach body scans, we teach telepathy type techniques. And somebody had a question here. Let's pop this on here. I saw this. In your past sessions, have you had telepathic contact with beings or people? Absolutely, all the time, literally all the time. We do teach how to have those kinds of conversations. There's kind of a method to the madness here, and it's very safe and simple. You can ask questions. You can probe someone's mind and find out what they're thinking. So that's what I'll be doing. Body scans and some mind probing, merging and mind probing techniques on the session I will share on Sunday on Chris Bledsoe's thing, and I know he's going to really enjoy this session. It's a wild ride, but you can read anyone's mind for certain, and if a being is open to it, you can have a conversation. If it's something that feels like it would be safe and welcoming to you, you can initiate a conversation, and we do teach that in our classes too. In fact, in January, for those who have already taken the beginner class, you can take we're doing a 5-day crazy communication class, and every day is going to be all about communication. You may end up talking to one of the great spiritual teachers, having telepathic conversation with one of the great spiritual teachers, maybe, you know, who knows, one of your favorite teachers. Maybe we'll look at different alien civilizations, or we might have a conversation with a dolphin or a whale. It's going to be 5 days of crazy communication fun. So that's something we have coming up for those who have already taken a beginning class. So that's something just exciting for the future. So great question. Thank you.
Here's another pretty good question. As a beginner to this technique, do I have to work blind, or can I know the target and proceed from there?
I recommend this, I recommend that when you're a student, a beginning student, that you should work blind. And the reason is because if you know what it is, I believe you still get real data. I absolutely do. But you're going to miss stuff. You're going to misinterpret stuff because you cannot help but put your own ideas about what it is into the mix. You can't help that. So I recommend, until you get a really great practice and know how real it is and start to understand what the data feels like and develop that language with your subconscious. And all of this takes time. So I recommend working blind for that beginning period. Now, do I do things that are not blind? That's called doing things front loaded. I do from time to time. Every single thing I've ever presented here at No Rivets has been blind, and going forward, it's always going to be that way. I'm not going to post any front loaded sessions. I generally will do front-loaded sessions for one particular case, and this is for law enforcement work that I do. If I'm working with a police department or another law enforcement agency, missing people, things like that, I will do some of those front-loaded. I find that that works very well for me. But again, I've been doing this 30 years. I do not recommend doing front-loaded for new students, only because you really want to give yourself a chance to know how real this is and to feel what the data feels like. There is a feeling to it. That's one of the things that time teaches you. And that's why when I'm mapping, I know that feeling and I chase that feeling. And that's what helps me really get more direct data and get more in-depth data. It's really hard to articulate what that feels like. It's an unusual feeling. It's a very subtle. Took me a long time to recognize it, and now I really work with it, but I think it just takes time.
Okay, so this is another question. Was the thumb drive in the in-thread atlas meant to be retrieved by others, or was it just meant to travel through space until the energy source disappears? I can answer that. I can answer from what I got.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I didn't quite get this in my work, but Jen got this in her session.
Yeah, because the probes that they sent out, they just went out to different parts of the universe, like all directions from that planet, was billions of miles away. So if you think about just being sent and just going on that trajectory, they were going to go out. And what I got was that the devices that were there were going to keep going in the direction until they wore out or they crashed into something or something happened. And if they got retrieved by anybody, it was just because they got retrieved. It was never really meant to go anywhere except to spread the information out. And I think the energy of it and people looking at it and trying to understand what it's all about energetically is really the gift. Or the gift, what I got was preserve your resources. That's what I got energetically. Now, was anyone else going to get other stuff? Maybe, but I guess it depends on what people are looking at, what they're open to, and all that other stuff. So I think it's just meant to go. And I said, once it passes Earth out of our trajectory here, it's going to keep going until something happens and it stops on its own, or crashing into something, or someone, grabs it or something. That's what I think. That's what I got. So
yeah, I think it's a traveler just passing on through. It's an astronomical object. It's just a moving on through. It goes where it ends up going. And somebody I saw in the questions here was saying, well, why don't you just put all your sessions out at once? Well, guys, I've got over 10,000 I've recorded. I've got 20,000 probably I've done. All these maps and papers everywhere. And I simply don't have time. I'm one person. I'm trying to offer these just for fun and to show the techniques and to, give a sense of mystery and wonder, the whole what if. There's a lot of interesting stuff out there. I don't have time to put everything out there all at once. I just don't have the time, the energy, the money to do it. I'm just trying to share as much as I can. It takes time to put videos together. Let me tell you, I am learning this technique. I am not a youngster, and so I'm having to teach myself how to do this video editing. So this is like a new thing for me to try to figure out how to put all this in, do an intro, get the music in there, get everything lined up just right, all of that. So it's time consuming, and I'm enjoying the process, and I'm trying to give you guys some information but not kill myself in the process. But good question. That was from Janik. And I think we've got time for like 1 or 2 more questions. Jen, what do you think?
Yeah. Yeah, we're getting close to the hour and a half.
Yeah, we're getting close to the hour
questions that I want to kind of address. What is the future event that keeps coming up in your sessions? Some huge future event is supposed to happen, perhaps something to do with the sun. Let me just say this. Unless the experience is look at the most important future event that's going to happen, you don't necessarily get anything. You know, you don't get a future event just because you think you should, unless it's part of the experience that that you're tasking. So that's why it's hard to say what you're going to get, because you don't know what you're going to get. Because if someone gives it to you blind, you're just going to get whatever is in there, as that. So you really can't say it unless you want to do a front-loaded question, or we give it to the class, right? We know what it is, and we give it to the class, and the class does the map on that. That's how that would work. So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, and I just want to shout out to John Knowles in the comments here, who is answering people's questions that we haven't gotten to. And so John has been doing this for a long time, almost as long as I've been doing it. And he used to work with me back in the day, and he's working with us today. So he's an amazing, amazing human being and a fantastic mapper. So thank you, John, for helping out here. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate it.
Okay, here's another.
And actually, the last question that Jen was talking about too brings up a good point, because a lot of people are giving us some awesome suggestions. But let me tell you what it takes to actually get that data. So now I have different pools, experience pools, target pools, as other people would call them, that I have. I've got like 4 different target pools. One's on my computer. One is in those big storage tubs that you move your stuff in. And I've got one for clients. And so if there's something I think is really cool, like some of the suggestions you guys are giving me that I've never looked at before, I am going to write up a really great task, and I am going to put them into one of my pools, either my verifiable pool or my, what I call dealer's choice pool, which is like, it could be anything. It could be verifiable, it could be something unknown, or any, futuristic, or maybe it's a client thing. And it just takes time, because I pull these out randomly, right? And I don't know what I'm going to get. So if I know generally, what it's going to be, then that's a bit of front loading. So it always takes time. Like I did a big project, and it took me 8 years. 8 years. And I ended up doing like 200 to 300 sessions on the history of the gray aliens, the gray dudes. I did this big project, but it took me 8 years to get through those tasks, because I'm doing homework. I don't know what's going to come up. You get what you get, and so, but I did this really cool long project, and I am writing a book about that, because that history is absolutely fascinating. And maybe one of these presentations, I can show some of those maps, because those were cool. And Jen has seen my presentation on this, and it's pretty cool. But it just takes time to get through everything. So even if you guys are giving us cool suggestions, it might take me a while to get to them. So there's plenty of cool stuff coming up. So any comments, Jen?
Well, I mean, there's a lot to look at, and it's not like, you can just sit down in 2 seconds and, pump out the map. As you know, Birdie spends hours on each map. And most of us who are learning are trying to do more and more. The more detail you get, the longer you work on it, the better information you get. So we don't want to rush through it either, because you want to get a complete picture, or as complete as possible. So
yeah, like 3i Atlas, that essentially I did it in 2. That was one session, even though I posted it in 3 parts. It was just one session. The first part I did in the morning, and then the second 2 parts that I posted here, that was really one big part. I finished it later in that day, in the late afternoon that day. So it took me like 3 hours just to do all that work. And I've done sessions that have taken 20 hours that took me days to complete, because they're so intricate. There's so much data in there, and maybe it's for a client, and I know I have to do a good job, so I'm really exploring, and you know, things like that. Generally, I spend between 1 and 3 hours on a regular homework session, and then client work or something special project work, or if I'm doing something that is just so amazingly fantastic, I might spend more time, and it could go up to 20 hours or even longer. I've had ones that I've got a couple of sessions that that really I spent a couple of weeks on, seriously, and then that's like multiple dozens of maps. But those are a more unusual cases. Yeah.
Okay, here's an anticlimactic last one. Where's your classroom located, and can you attend online?
Oh, yeah, we teach online classes, and we have a beginner class. Of course, we've got our free class here you can take, already there on YouTube for you. You can map too. And then the first week of November, we're doing a 5-day beginning class. And then next May, we're doing an in-person class here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. It will be held at the University of New Mexico. And that is the one where Chris Bledsoe will also be with us for that class. And he will be calling down the orbs and the Sandia Mountain foothills for us each night. So it'll be pretty exciting. So if you're interested in those classes, drop Jen a note or drop myself a note, and we can give you information on that. So
I just put the link in the chat.
TransDimensional. Those are our classes. Yeah.
/learn.
Yeah. Okay. So that we've got those things going on. It's going to be fun. We're keeping our class sizes small for our online classes so that people can get individual, feedback. I comment on everyone's work. We have a lot of laughs and a lot of fun in class. It's really exciting. And you will feel good about yourself and good about your work, 100%, guaranteed. And taking an in-person class is an otherworldly experience. It's really fun because not only do we get to take the class, but we get to hang out over meals, and you get to hear all of my crazy stories going back 30 years, and I have got a lot of them. Plus, in-person class, I will do a live remote viewing or live mapping for you. Class gets to pick what I look at. So you get to see me do it live in person. You guys get to choose what you want me to look at. So, so that's just something to keep in mind if you're interested. So thank you guys. This was a really fun hour and a half. Really glad that we did this. Maybe we'll do this again sometime. Thank you, Jen, so much. Thank you, John, for helping out in the comments. Love you guys. Love everybody who's here. Everybody who's attended. Thank you. If we didn't get to your question, we're sorry. We're doing our best here, but we'll get to it next time, or drop us an email, and we'll get your questions answered that way. So love you all.
Okay, good night. Thank you, everybody, for showing up and having great questions, even though we didn't get to all of them. Most of them, probably.
And then I saw one of the questions I did see that I meant to answer, and then everything got away from me, was, could we post the student maps on the website so that people could look at them more closely? And so what do you think, Jen?
Oh, which website?
Yeah, this
TransDimensional Mapping? No, because we don't have student stuff.
We
don't have room for student stuff on that, because then it would get too complicated.
I can put it on No Rivets.
Okay, that would be norivets.com.
norivets.com. Yeah. So anyway, I'll post it in the, when we do that, I'll post that in the community posting location on the YouTube channel. I don't even know what that thing's called. I am not a YouTube expert, but doing my best. Okay, I love you all, and can't wait to see you next time. See you Sunday for Chris Bledsoe and the lady. You don't want to miss that one. That one is, it's not what you're going to, it's really different. That's all I'm going to say. It's really different. Okay, good night.
Good night.